Hi everyone, I'm Rebecca Virginia, and today I'm going to be sharing with you some of my absolute favorite farmhouse DIYs that I have made over the last year. Let's waste no time and get right into the first farmhouse DIY. The first DIY is actually going to be using one of the garden fences that the Dollar Tree currently has out in their gardening section. They have put out a lot of new garden items for spring, so make sure you don't skip over that section at your local Dollar Tree. I used these miter shears I got off Amazon. They're my favorite. They cut through everything really nicely. And I cut out 4 of these fence panels, and these are going to be the sides of our farmhouse lantern. So the first step, I'm going to be painting them all white. I'm going to be doing this to the front as well as the backs of the fences. This is very beautiful. I've seen a couple of people do this. They kept it black, and I thought that came out really, really nicely. I wanted to go for more of a farmhouse rather than modern look, which is why I'm going in with the white paint. But if you wanted to make it a little bit easier on yourself, it would definitely be faster and easier if you just kept these black. And I'm going over it again. I did 2 coats of the white paint. I only did 1 coat of the white paint on the back side, but on the front, especially for the front panel and the side panels, I made sure to do another coat. The Dollar Tree is always coming out with these different shadow boxes for various seasons. This one is from the fall time, but again, they come out with them for Easter, for Valentine's Day. All of the time, they usually just change what's on the inside. And this is going to be the base for our lantern. And just to make sure that you don't see any of that buffalo check when I fill it with florals and the candle, I am just going in with a coat of white paint. Now, to really dirty up and make our lantern look more farmhouse, I went in with a dry brushing technique and a bit of gray paint. I'm using the color Elephant by Waverly. That is my go-to gray paint, and that is just going to distress our fence posts as we turn it into the lantern. And you could omit the shadow box that I have in the center and just hot glue the edges of the lantern together. But using this shadow box just made it way easier. And also you'll see in a moment when I start to add the candle and the greenery and the florals that are going inside the lantern, it keeps everything nice and compact and in one place. Whereas if you didn't have that, you would have to pick up and move everything individually instead of having it all nice and closed into the lantern. The only downside of filling the lantern up after I had already hot glued the fence posts is it was a little bit hard, and I kind of had to stick my fingers in the sides of the fence post to make sure that the greenery was placed nicely. But I picked some sprigs of eucalyptus that I already had on some floral picks. I used a candle from, of course, the Dollar Tree and some more spring florals from the Dollar Tree. I have really been loving the purples, especially the lavender picks this year, so I used a majority of those. I've been loving using purple florals as decor this spring, so for this DIY, I knew I wanted to use a lot. I love the galvanized tins from the Dollar Tree. I think they are really beautiful as is, but of course I had to DIY it a bit. I took a strip of burlap from a large bundle of burlap fabric that I had, and I just cut it into a strip and then hot glued it down the center of my tin. And over that, I had a welcome galvanized sign, so I'm going ahead and hot gluing that on top before moving on to the sides of our tin. These are just going to be decorative handles. I took a bit of the nautical rope from the Dollar Tree and just hot glued it onto the sides. If you wanted this to actually work as handles, I would recommend adding a bit of E6000 glue just to make sure that they really stay in place. And now is the fun part, or at least my favorite part, and that is arranging all of the florals in our tin. I put down 3 blocks of floral foam and just held those in place with a bit of hot glue, and then I went in with my favorite purple picks from the Dollar Tree. This is going to be up high, so I didn't have to fill my tin with any Spanish moss or anything to hide the floral foam, but if you are going to have this at eye level, then I would definitely recommend filling it in with some either burlap or Spanish moss to make sure you don't see that floral foam peeking out. The next spring DIY is a really quick and easy way to bring a bit of greenery into your home. Let's get started with this craft. The Dollar Tree came out with these arches a little bit ago, and I absolutely love them. It took a while for them to show up in my Dollar Tree, but they did this fall. So if you haven't seen them yet in your store, keep hoping, because it might just be like mine and you might be getting them a bit later. I love the gray color of the arches, but I wanted to distress it and give it more of that farmhouse feel. So I'm going in with my white Waverly paint and pretty heavy-handedly painting all over our gray sign. I also took off the Our Family Gathers Here sign that was on the center of this arch. It was just hot glued on, so I just went ahead and peeled it off, and it came off pretty easy. Next, I'm taking some greenery from a floral pick, and I'm going to be creating a wreath with it. I took a pipe cleaner and just made it into a circle formation, kind of to act as a guide for me. Originally, I thought that I might be hot gluing the greenery on top of it, but the greenery actually held its shape very well without having to do that, so I really just used the pipe cleaner as a guide. And once I made it all the way around with my wreath, I wanted it to be a bit more full. It was looking a little bit sparse, so I went over the top of it with another ring of greenery just to make sure that my wreath was a bit more bountiful and full. Then, as the last step, I made a little jute bow and just hot glued that to the top of the wreath before hot gluing it to the top of the arch. These glass milk bottles were such an amazing find at my Dollar Tree that I knew I had to use them for a DIY, but wasn't sure what for. This spring, I got the inspiration to use them in this farmhouse DIY. If you spot these milk bottles in your Dollar Tree, you have got to pick them up. I found mine in the glass section, but I know some others have found it in their Crafter Square section. These are such gorgeous bottles with such amazing detail. I was shocked that I found them at the Dollar Tree instead of Hobby Lobby or even Target. These are really going to be the main stars of this DIY. So to highlight them, I first covered it entirely in some white chalk paint, even getting the top of the milk bottle. And then, of course, to distress it, I'm going in with some sandpaper and rubbing it along the front section of our milk bottle, as well as the sides and a bit on the top. Chalk paint works really well on glass because it gives a very nice matte finish, and that matte finish paired with the sandpaper just gives a perfect vintage rustic look. Then to finish off the milk bottle, I added in 2 picks of some of my favorite florals that I found at the Dollar Tree this year. They really knocked it out of the park, especially with their lavender picks. And as the final accent, I had some of this really beautiful lace ribbon from the Crafters Square section of the Dollar Tree. So loosely and fairly messily, I just tied it onto the front of our milk bottles. I saw a version of this bunny DIY on Pinterest and had to try my hand on it. I just thought it was so cute using the little clay pot to balance on the bunny's head. Let's dive right into this adorable craft. Originally, I thought this DIY would be so cute using the natural color of the clay pot and the green moss bunnies from the Dollar Tree, but sadly the moss bunnies are made out of styrofoam and very lightweight and just could not handle the clay pot. It kept toppling over, so I ended up using one of these clay bunny figurines, which is also from the Dollar Tree. For the clay pot, since it was going on the white bunny, I thought that it had to match, so I ended up painting that white and then distressing it with some of this brighter lavender colored paint. I did tie a little twine bow on the side of my rabbit, and then I started filling in the clay pot. I put a bit of floral foam in, and then, no surprise, went back in with those gorgeous lavender picks from the Dollar Tree and just filled up the clay pot. Next is a little bit tricky. You have to play around and really try to balance it on the bunny's head, but once you get it perfect, I actually ended up putting it a little bit closer to the front of the bunny's head than I would have thought, but that is how I was able to get it to balance on our bunny. I went ahead and hot glued the clay pot to the top of our bunny's head. I hope you're enjoying today's video. If you're new, hello and welcome. I'm Rebecca Virginia, and on this channel I do DIYs and home decor, mostly focusing on inexpensive items like items from the Dollar Tree. If that sounds like something you'd enjoy, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any future videos. Also, follow me on Instagram so you always stay updated on what I'm crafting. Speaking of crafts, let's dive into our next one. It's one of my absolute favorites. I transformed a Dollar Tree cutting board into this piece of farmhouse decor. Decorative cutting boards have been all the rage lately, and I've seen them all over Instagram, Pinterest, and Etsy. I really liked the way that they looked, but especially from perusing on Amazon, they are super expensive. Even the ones on Etsy, which used Dollar Tree supplies, were almost $20. I looked at Amazon, got some inspiration on their cutting boards as well as Pinterest and Etsy, and kind of went from there knowing that I was going to use this Dollar Tree cutting board that I got during the Easter season, but kind of change it to be a little bit more spring related and even something that I can leave up all summer long. So I did take that front section off of the cutting board. Be careful because it has those thumbtacks in it, but other than that, it came up really easily. And then I took a section of some burlap fabric that I have, and I'm going to be creating a pocket using this, but instead of sewing, I'm just going to use hot glue. I took my chalk pen and did a rough outline of how I wanted the size of the pocket to be, and then I just cut it out using a pair of scissors. Before moving on to adding the pocket, I did want a tiny embellishment on the handle. I didn't want a completely jute covered handle, but I did wrap just a little bit of it, probably about an inch, in some jute to kind of give that rustic farmhouse touch. And now I am adhering our burlap pocket onto our cutting board, and I hot glued the bottom sections and then about halfway up the sides. And when I was halfway up the sides, I did a check to make sure that I was still going to be able to tuck some florals in there. And then once I figured out that I would have enough room, I went ahead and glue down the rest of the sides as well as folding over the top section, and basically that just gave a little hem to it. I thought it was a cute detail, and I didn't love the unfinished edges of the burlap. It was super rustic farmhouse, and I was going for mostly farmhouse, maybe just a touch of rustic. So to kind of cover up those rough edges of the burlap, I had this really nice delicate lace ribbon that I picked up at the Dollar Tree. So I did that on the sides as well as the bottom. And just to reuse some of our supplies, I pulled the thumbtacks that were originally on the sign and placed those in the two bottom corners of our pocket. I thought it was a really nice touch, and then that way I didn't have to worry about recycling the pins. I was using them for a project right then and there. The next step, these were probably my favorite florals. I've used them so much. I bought a lot of them at the Dollar Tree. They're gorgeous lavender picks with some lamb's ear, and it just fit perfectly. And I've been a big fan of the purples for this spring. So I tucked those into the burlap pocket. And then the last few steps were just adding those additional touches and embellishments. I took a little bit of the beaded garland from the Dollar Tree and draped that across the top of our pocket. Then I made a bow out of some raffia. And I also have these wood cutouts of different insects. I have dragonflies, bumblebees, and I believe a ladybug. And I picked them up last year. They do have them again this summer, but I wasn't really using them that much last year. I think I made one bumblebee DIY with them. So I thought adding on this dragonfly was the perfect way to use it and brought a really sweet spring touch. This next DIY is probably my favorite in the whole video. I love fresh florals, but they can be pretty expensive. So I wanted to do a craft with faux florals that would look like the real thing. As I already mentioned, this DIY is super easy and quick to do. It almost felt silly to put it in this video, but I think it came out so beautiful, so I had to include it. Also, when I looked on Amazon, the prices were kind of crazy, $23.99. Yes, you get 3 bundles, but I am going going to make a bundle here for only $3, so I think it's a bargain. And actually, this craft paper I already had. It is from the Dollar Tree. I get it in a huge roll for only $1. And then I got these 2 flower picks. One is lavender and one, I forget what it was called, but it looked a lot like lavender to me. So I just stuck them together. They had a little bit varying shades of purple, so I thought the 2 different shades would look really pretty. I cut out my craft paper in kind of a rectangular shape. I just cut it around the florals, and then it's really easy. You fold one side over, fold the other side, and it creates this cone shape. Once the sides were folded over and I had that cone shape, I kind of just pinched it right at the bottom section. That is where I'm going to be putting my ribbon. But before I put the ribbon on, I first took a rubber band. The ribbons are really just going to be decorative. I don't want to tie it too tight. So the rubber band is really going to be what holds all of this together. And after I had tied the rubber band around, I kind of fluffed back out the craft paper because it had a lot of crinkles in it. The ribbon will hide some of the crinkles, but yeah, I was just kind of repositioning my floral picks and adjusting the craft paper so it wasn't quite as crunchy and wrinkly. Then I grabbed some of this ribbon. I love it. It's a linen ribbon, and I thought this would go really pretty with the whole homemade kind of vibe. There's a lot of frays off this ribbon, so I liked the linen fabric material, and I just really casually tied it in a knot and just had the lengths hanging. I didn't make a bow or anything. This next step is really going a step further. I decided to make a label for my lavender. I like using these 2 types of sticker paper. One is a glossy sticker paper from the brand Nito, and the other one, I forget the brands, but I will leave both links down below. They're both from Amazon, and they are my favorite sticker paper. I have a pretty cheap printer. I think it was like $50 off of Walmart. So both of these papers go through really nicely and don't jam. Kind of with cheaper printers, a lot of stuff will jam in it. I have some vinyl printing paper and that always jams, but this stuff works great. I just made my own sticker. It said Lavender Farms and a little piece of lavender on it. I just printed that out on my printer and sticker paper and then placed that onto my lavender cone, and I thought it added a really cute homemade touch. The next DIY, I saw a version on Amazon selling for much more, and it is a nod to one of my favorite shows, so I had to recreate it. I saw a rose apothecary planter selling for $18 on Amazon, and I knew that I could make just as cute of a version using Dollar Tree items. I picked up one of the clay pots from the Dollar Tree. This I would say is a medium-sized one, and it actually came in a set of 2, so that's always a good bargain when you can get a double. So all that I did was try to match it to the Amazon one. Now the Amazon one is going to be more of a glossy kind of clay jar, but I tried my best to recreate it. I did use chalk paint, which is notoriously pretty matte, but I will fix that. Then I picked out this Rose Apothecary vinyl decal using my Cricut. If you don't have a Cricut, no problem. There are tons of versions of this online. Just put into Google Images, Rose Apothecary. You can print it out and Mod Podge it on. I am taking a glossy Mod Podge because that's how the Amazon version was. And again, like I said, I used chalk paint, so it was pretty matte. And the extra benefit of this is if you end up printing out your Rose Apothecary label, the Mod Podge will adhere it perfectly onto the clay pot. I thought Dollar Tree was extra amazing this year with their spring florals, so I am using all Dollar Tree floral picks. I placed a piece of floral foam down into the center of the clay jar, and then I'm just taking various purple floral picks and placing them in, mostly lavender. This would have been amazing if I had roses to go in the Rose Apothecary jar, but alas, I did not, so I went with my favorite flower and just chose all of these really pretty lavender picks. I like the pop of color it adds to our black and white DIY. This next one is pretty simple, but when you see what Amazon was charging for it, you'll be happy I used Dollar Tree supplies. We are taking it back to the school days when you had to cover your books with a brown paper bag. I am taking 3 books that I have just had. This is actually a really good one. I read it recently, so if you're looking for a mythology kind of book read, go for it. Amazon was charging almost $30 for a similar book stack, and I thought that was outrageous because it is so simple to make. You guys probably already know how to cover books, again, probably from your school days, but this is a really quick way. It's not exactly the best way for it to last a super long time, so you might have a better way of actually covering them. But for this project, they were not going to be going in and out of backpacks, so I didn't have to be too precise. I'm just folding down the top and the bottom so that it fits the book, folding the front over, making a crease, and then I will fold back the front cover and slip that into the nook that has been created by all of the folds. If you need a more in-depth tutorial, there are tons on YouTube, but I figured this was fairly self-explanatory / most of you probably had experience in this, so I kind of sped through the book covering portion of this DIY. Amazon's book stack was white with some brown distressing, but I'm going to be doing the opposite. I have brown craft paper, and then I grabbed some white chalk paint and a fluffy paintbrush, and I am just distressing all over the craft paper. You could also use white paper and distress it brown, kind of like Amazon did, but this is what I had on hand, so I was making it easy for myself. You can write Home Sweet Home using vinyl like me, you can use a marker, or you can use some rub-on transfers from the Dollar Tree. What is more farmhouse than taking something that you used in your kitchen and repurposing it into a home decor DIY? For the last DIY in this video, I'm going to show you how to make over a wine bottle into a usable candle. I am using this glass cutter that I got off Amazon. I will link it down below if you all also want to use it. It's really great at scoring the glass on this wine bottle, which is going to be the basis for our candle. So I placed it onto the glass cutter and slowly turned the wine bottle so that the blade was able to score the glass. Now we are moving on to setting up our glass cutting station. And to do this, I just took an old trash can that I had in one of my bathrooms and I'm filling it up with some ice cold water. And then I went ahead and moved to the sink in my garage just in case any glass were to break. I didn't want it in my house. And I also filled up another bucket about a quarter of the way with water. And I'm doing this because just in case the glass breaks and smashes, that water is going to break its fall and hopefully keep the glass from shattering everywhere. Now that we have got our cold water all ready to go, it is time to make some hot water. So what I did was take a pan and put it on my stovetop, and I did turn up the heat until it was boiling. Be really careful on this part. And once it was boiling, I turned it off the heat and let it cool down a little bit so it wasn't boiling, but it was still super hot. And then safety first, I am putting on my glass resistant gloves as well as some stylish safety glasses just in case the bottle breaks or smashes or shatters. You definitely want to protect those eyes. I know it looks pretty cool. And what you're going to do is alternate between dipping the wine bottle in the ice cold water and then pouring the super hot, almost boiling water over the score line. So I am dunking it again in the ice water for about 15 to 20 seconds, and then immediately pulling it out and pouring that super hot, almost boiling water across the score line. I recommend putting quite a bit of ice in the water. I got a better result with the more ice I put in. If you happen to have a tea kettle, this would be way easier and maybe even a little bit safer. The tea kettle would have a nice spout for you to pour over the score line. But for me, I just had to be super careful, make sure I didn't burn myself, and just pour the hot, again, almost boiling but not quite boiling water over the score line. And I have seen some people just straight dip the wine bottle into a pot of super hot or boiling water, but I just really didn't want to be placing a glass bottle that might end up shattering in any of my cookware that I use on a daily basis in the kitchen, just in case a little bit of glass got lost in there or left in there. It just made me a little too nervous. So I decided to just pour the hot water directly on to the wine bottle, and that worked out perfectly. I did this about 4 or 6 times, and then eventually you will hear the glass start to break, and it can be a little startling, almost feels like a horror movie because you know that it's about to separate and break. And now our wine bottle has successfully broken into 2 pieces. And as you can see, the water did catch that, so we didn't have any breakage on the top half of our wine bottle. So now it is time to smooth things out a bit. So I am taking this sandpaper that I got in my glass cutting kit from Amazon. It came in there, it said it was special for glass, but I think you could just use regular sandpaper as well. And I'm just flipping upside down the beer bottle and the wine bottle and just rotating it in circles and really catching those edges just to make sure that there are no sharp pieces and that all of the edges of the broken glass are nice and sanded down, rounded, so they don't hurt anyone or yourself. Again, I really recommend this glass cutting kit from Amazon. I made a couple of other wine bottle candles for practice before filming this, and they all came out really well, and I think that's because I used the Amazon glass cutting kit. Next, we need to fill up our bottles. So I'm doing this by taking 2 of these tall candles from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to be melting down the wax. So what I did was take one of my medium-sized pots and filled it with water. You don't want it to be boiling. You want this on medium heat. For reference, my stove has a scale of 1 to 10, and I had this on a 6.5, and it did take 2 hours for it to fully melt down. So definitely give yourself some time and maybe keep your eye on the stove, watch a show, watch some YouTube as the wax melts down in these candles. And then the next step is you are going to need to fish out the wicks from inside the candle. I had on some grill mitts, which are heat resistant, and made sure that I didn't burn myself. And then I used some tongs and a paper straw to fish out the wicks. Then I wrapped the wicks around some pencils that I had in my junk drawer and let the bottom of the wick hang in place. You could hot glue the wick down, but you really don't need to. This method will work just fine. I started to fill up my glass bottles with the melted down wax, again wearing my grilling gloves that are heat resistant. You'll definitely, if you're going to be doing this, use either a pot holder, an oven mitt, something to make sure that you don't burn yourself because this wax is going to be extremely hot. So I filled each of those up using the 2 larger candles from the Dollar Tree, and then I ended up leaving it overnight to set. I think it would only take a couple of hours, but I just wanted it to play it a little bit safe and make sure that the wax was fully hardened and dry before I went in and cut the wicks. So as you can see, it is now fully hardened, so I can go in with my pair of scissors and just trim down these wicks. I loved the way that the wine candle looked, leaving the label on. I thought it was really cool and kind of a fun way if you are a wine drinker to display what you're drinking, or it could even be funny if you're using a vinegar bottle or a lemonade bottle to have a cute label. I think it's kind of fun, and it shows the original purpose of the bottle and how you repurposed it. But I also took this smaller bottle and I did just add on some fun decals. You could put stickers or maybe some lettering and write out your own saying, but I think they look good both ways. I liked being a little bit more original and creating my own label, but I also think leaving the original label says something too. Thanks so much for watching. I will be back next Thursday with a brand new DIY video. I am done with my Easter decor, but I still have some spring stuff that I want to share with all of you. Until then, keep searching, keep creating.